This is After Ian.
In our first piece, we learned that even emergency responders are taking lessons from Hurricane Ian, along with some residents who now have a new perspective on hurricanes.
There it goes.
Oh my God, this is crazy.
The Gulf stealing cars. This is home video from the Schmucker family capturing Hurricane Ian's historic storm surge on the streets of Fort Myers Beach. Dustin and Monica Schmucker and their 2 kids sought shelter in their friend's beach home just blocks from the Gulf because it seemed safer than their own house. This was a 3-story concrete home.
Our house is starting to flood, which is, we still got a few floors yet before we get in too much trouble. They were out to almost the top of the doors there.
The storm surge was more than the Schmuckers could have imagined.
Holy crap, it's still blowing a lot. The water's over the roofs now.
At first, Monica says she believed the house would be okay, but watching homes fall apart in the 15-foot storm surge outside made her wonder for how long.
I had my kids' life jackets in my hand, and I would take them everywhere I'd go because at any point I was expecting the top floor to just rip off.
It is just getting stronger and stronger and stronger.
The home proved strong enough until the waters receded. Schmucker is grateful for how that day ultimately ended, but dealing with what was left behind was heartbreaking.
I don't feel remotely recovered at all. I still struggle with everything every day.
She's certainly not alone.
Well, it was coming up, but when it got to this stage right here where the air conditioner is, it just started flowing in.
Robert Heather never imagined how quickly water would fill his first-floor studio apartment on San Carlos Island, or how soon his doors would become impossible to open, trapping him inside.
I thought what I'd do is just break out the window and crawl out. But when I started banging on the window, that's when I realized it's a hurricane window, and I can't break it out.
He tried calling for help for 2 hours.
Well, I was banging on the ceiling, bang for a few minutes, rest for 5, bang for a few minutes, rest for 5.
Somehow, a neighbor felt Robert's vibrations upstairs.
They saw me at about 1:15 maybe.
And the water was how high?
Here.
The neighbors broke his window just in time. Both Robert and Monica say the next storm threat will be different.
Before Ian, I wouldn't even think about leaving. Now I probably will.
Next time, I think it will be easier to convince my husband to leave.
I think people just kept looking at that cone saying, well, the cone's not here yet, it's not here yet, it's not here yet. And then when the cone was finally here, which was only 36 to 48 hours in advance, people started thinking it was too late to go.
Kevin Guthrie, the director of the Florida Division of Emergency Management, says that wrong decision sometimes proves deadly.
If you just got off this island and got across, we would have had 95% fewer deaths by people just leaving the island and going to the closest shelter, which was 7 miles away.
Just a small percentage of residents ended up at shelters. Instead, operators at emergency operations centers were flooded with phone calls like this.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
I'm at the Walmart in Inglewood. Our house has flooded out, and I had called 911 earlier.
Okay.
So we got in the car, and we made it to Walmart, but the roads are still so flooded. I didn't know what to do, and we were trying to get to a shelter.
The shelters are closed at this time. You can't get into a shelter.
Okay, so now what's my next step? What can I do?
Get into a safe location and wait out the storm.
Tracy Steele is a 911 operator in Charlotte County.
During the storm itself was a lot of people that didn't leave the county. They didn't want to leave their houses. So, they're calling because they need help, whether it be medical or they're requesting a deputy because they have water coming into their house. And, at that point, there's nobody on the road. There's no help coming. And that's very hard to tell people.
You would calm them the best you could, but at some point, accountability is not out there, it's right here. And so that's what I want our citizens to understand. Oh, well, it costs so much money to evacuate. What's your life worth?
Mary McFarland is a volunteer operator who answers calls on the county's community hotline.
I live in a 55-plus community of manufactured homes, and those are mandatory evacuations. And I could not convince my own neighbors to leave.
Sometimes we don't get the outcome of, did they make it, did they not make it, are they okay, is the child okay? It's very hard.
So some of the deaths in the county were those people who called us. There's a possibility of that, but we don't know that. So that's hard. I've asked people, strangers, did you stay? Yes. Would you stay again? No. What could we have done differently? What messaging could we have done differently to get you to leave? And they can't give me an answer, which is frustrating. But they said, well, I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was, or the television or the radio or the media didn't make it seem going to be this bad.
Ian's forecast track did continue to shift south, but Guthrie says the state made it clear early on that all of Southwest Florida needed to prepare.
We ordered a state of emergency from the governor 84 hours in advance of the storm, so we had more than enough time. But again, I think people got so focused on the cone that they said this thing is not going to happen here. I remind you that even when this storm was heading towards Tampa, there was 6 to 8 foot of storm surge for this beach. And we would have still had catastrophic damage on this beach, and probably nobody would have evacuated. Because again, the cone's going to Tampa, why do I need to do that?
But Guthrie says the state is working on improving its messaging to the public. It brought in a psychologist to work with emergency officials as well as local and national meteorologists.
If people know the reason we're asking them to evacuate, I really think they'll evacuate. I think they'll do the common sense approach. The number one thing I heard over and over again is, well, Irma wasn't this bad. Charlie wasn't this bad. So what we have to do is tell people the difference between Hurricane Ian, Hurricane Charlie, Hurricane Irma. For example, Hurricane Irma had 12 to 18 feet of storm surge that came through the Everglades and saltwater marsh, a natural-based solution. But in this case, Hurricane Ian, as we look out here, it came from the south-southwest to the north-northeast. There is no nature-based solution to lay that storm surge down. So that 12 to 18 foot of storm surge hit this barrier island, which is in essence a nature-based solution to lay the storm surge down.
Guthrie says Southwest Floridians living in at-risk areas need to have an escape plan, not fleeing hundreds of miles, but just to safety. Robert, who lives in a trailer right in front of his old apartment now, knows firsthand what his storm surge threat is and how lucky he is to have survived it with the help of Good Samaritans.
How do I feel about them?
Yep.
Thank God they saved my life.
He has no plans to leave for now, but knows what the worst can be. So does Monica. Nearly a year later, the repairs on their home have barely begun.
It's a lot for somebody to deal with, and I have kids, I have a job. My husband lost his business. It's just a lot, and it's a lot all at once.
But like Robert, she's not going anywhere. Fort Myers Beach is home, and she knows the risk living in the community she loves.
What makes this town so special is still here, and so the buildings may be destroyed, but the resilience of the community is amazing, and everybody's come together to rebuild, and I'm not leaving it.
There are many more stories and more of holding our community leaders accountable as we rebuild after Hurricane Ian.
Please stay with WGCU as we continue to gather the news and present it at WGCU.org, on WGCU FM, and right here on WGCU PBS.
We want to say thank you to all for helping us tell the stories of Hurricane Ian.